This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Hi friends, I'm Carrie Jo, and this is Holy Chuckles Podcast. This is a space for honest faith, lived experiences, and shining a light in the places we've learned to hide. I'm not here to explain faith. I'm here to live it out loud. So take a breath and let's make room for what's real. Welcome back to Holy Chuckles Podcast. I'm really glad you're here. Today, I'm talking about 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 27. This verse doesn't rush in. It's the moment when something you have been living with quietly, finally shows itself, and you realize you can't unsee it. 1 Samuel 2:27. Now a man of God came to Eli and said to him, "This is what the Lord says. Did I not clearly reveal myself to your ancestors' family when they were in Egypt under the Pharaoh?" When I talk about this verse literally, this verse starts with the word now, and that matters up to this point. Eli's sons are acting out. Eli keeps letting it go. Samuel's growing quietly, and life just keeps moving on. As of yet, nothing has interrupted the system. But when this verse says now, that's the moment the silence ends. This verse says a man of God. A man of God. And that's important. This man of God is not named. He's not a part of Eli's family. This man doesn't have anything to lose here by approaching Eli. He's not Samuel, and he's not Eli talking to himself. This man is coming from the outside. And most of the time when the system is broken, the truth isn't going to reveal itself from the inside. It comes from the outside. This man of God, he's not brought in to fix the broken system. He's not brought in to take on leadership. This man's just there, sent by God. He's sent by God to say what needs to be said. The man came to Eli. Eli didn't go looking for this man. Eli didn't go looking for answers. Eli isn't asking to be held accountable. The truth comes to Eli. The truth seeks Eli out. Eli continued letting his sons run amok. And now God is stepping in. In this verse, it says, and said to him. This is the first time in chapter 2 where God actually speaks about what's been happening. God is speaking to Eli directly through this man. Verse 27 is the moment where everyone has seen the problems. Everyone is talking about the problems. And now Eli now has to face the problems. The next part, the Lord says, this is God making it clear. These were not the words of the messenger. This man is not giving his opinion. The verse continues. The Lord says, this is God making it clear to Eli. These are not the words of the messenger. This man is not giving his opinion. He's not giving advice, and he's not trying to explain anything. The man plainly states, this message is coming straight from God. I don't know about you guys, but this for me is where things get interesting, because now things are getting real. God says through this messenger, through this unnamed man, did I not clearly reveal myself? This is not a question looking for information. God is not asking Eli to answer. God is reminding Eli of something they both already know. God is saying, Eli, I made myself known. Our relationship was clear, and the calling that I gave you was not confusing. And God says, your ancestors' family. God is not just talking to Eli or about Eli now. He's widening the lens. God is talking about a family role that has been passed down for generations. God then reminds Eli when he says, when they were in Egypt. God is speaking in theory. He's pointing something out. He's pointing to something that Eli's family has already lived through. It's God saying, remember when? Hey, Eli, remember when? God isn't starting with what went wrong. God is going all the way back to how the relationship began. God is reminding Eli, I met your family when they were powerless, not when they were in charge. God is saying, I didn't whisper my way into this relationship. I made myself clear. This verse, and I love this verse because it reminds me to listen. It reminds me to be open. It reminds me to be humble, because having my faith, listening to God, doesn't mean I'm never going to fall, doesn't mean I'm never going to make mistakes, but it does mean that I have to be open. It does mean that I have to be willing to correct those mistakes or those problems. So this verse, God is saying, Eli, I made myself known. I chose your family. I entrusted your family. And now we have to talk. We have to talk about what happened to that trust. Let's go into the symbolic. The man of God, symbolically, he represents the things that you have been avoiding, and now they're showing up. Your life has been moving along. The system you are in is broken. The systems could be many things. The environment you're living in, your family, your relationships, your job, your community. The system is broken. But you, along with everybody around you in that system, you've learned to adapt instead of stopping it. This man not only represents the things you've been avoiding, but it also represents interruption. The interruption of silence. The interruption is saying life can't keep continuing this way. Some people avoid this part of healing forever. They get right here, and then avoidance happens. They stay in the same patterns. The path may look a little different, but they stay in those same patterns. When the verse says a man of God came to Eli, we know Eli didn't seek this man out. He didn't go looking for clarity. This man of God is awareness. And awareness doesn't always show up because we ask for it. Awareness doesn't have to be invited. God speaks directly. This is the moment when what your soul already knows finally gets said out loud. Your soul is pushing through. There's no more vague feelings. There's no more something isn't right, because your soul is making it clear. When God says, "Did I not make myself known?" Before accountability becomes remembrance. And this is the time when you start remembering who you came here to be, who you truly are, and what was entrusted to you while you're here. Your truth often begins with, wait, this isn't how it started. This isn't what it's supposed to be. When God references Egypt, God is reminding Eli that authority wasn't earned, it was given. And right now, remembering who you are, remembering your connection to God, remembering what you came here to be, because you're co-creating with God, because you are with God, and your purpose here, everybody's purpose here, is of God. And symbolically, when God references Egypt, God is letting us know, I didn't just send you to earth to run amok. I didn't just send you to earth to cause issues. You have a purpose. You have a purpose. Every single person here has a purpose. I gave you life so you could find your purpose. And that's your authority. Your authenticity is your authority. And right here, when God is talking about Egypt, God is talking about taking care of what you were given, not acting like you own it. God is telling you, we are in this together. It's not just yours. It's ours, mine and yours. God is saying, are you taking for granted what I gave you, which is life? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life? Or are you taking it for granted? Because when something is given, it can be used well or it can be misused. When God addresses Eli's family, when he opens up that lens, and God stops addressing just Eli as an individual, symbolically this matters. Because what's being confronted is not one bad decision or one mistake. It's a pattern. It's something that has been allowed to continue over time. This is the moment where generational patterns become visible. When you start to realize it didn't start with you, but it can end with you. This is the point where nothing has changed, but everything has shifted. Verse 27 is the end of denial. It's not punishment. It's not collapse. It's the moment where truth enters the room and doesn't leave. After verse 27, once the awareness arrives, the story can't go backwards. You can't ignore it anymore. 1 Samuel 2:27. It's the moment symbolically where truth interrupts the silence, where truth reminds us who we came here to be and where truth makes it impossible to keep pretending. When we think about this verse in our real lives, it looks like life keeps going until it can't. It looks like living in situations you know and feel aren't right for you. Could be a relationship that feels off, a family pattern that is exhausting, a job that is slowly draining the life out of you, maybe a role where you've been carrying everything. Nothing blows up at first. There's no big crisis, and everyone continues to adapt. You start telling yourself, it's not that bad. This is just how it is. I don't have time right now. I'll deal with this later. That's pre-verse 27 season. That's when the shift is kind of starting. And then that silence, or I'll deal with it later, it gets interrupted. Interruption in our real lives, they show up as a conversation you didn't plan. A realization that you start feeling in your body. Maybe someone finally says out loud what you've been avoiding or what you've been thinking and you haven't been saying it out loud. Maybe one day you wake up and you say to yourself, I can't do this anymore. I cannot do this anymore. That interruption, it's not always dramatic. A lot of the times it's quiet. But when it shows up, when the interruption shows up in your life, you can't ignore it. You can't unsee it. You can't unhear it. Because when truth is ready to reveal itself, there's no stopping it. You can try. You can try to ignore it, but it'll keep showing up in different ways. Maybe it shows up through a therapist, through a coworker, through an acquaintance, through an event. Maybe it shows up through a situation that doesn't care about your excuses anymore. Mine showed up in a homeless man named David. That truth rarely comes from people who benefit from you staying the same, from you staying in your patterns. Sometimes this interruption, this moment where the interruption comes in, sometimes people interpret this moment as a spiritual attack or spiritual warfare. I'm not here to tell anyone what is or isn't happening spiritually. I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is what's happening in real life. Because regardless of what someone believes is happening spiritually or in a spiritual realm, we still have to be right here on earth, in our bodies, in our relationships, and in the choices that we've made. Not everyone responds to the truth in the same way. Not everyone responds in how they take accountability or don't take accountability in the same way. Not everyone understands that they are responsible, whether those patterns were given to them or not, but they are responsible for the choices that they've made with what was given to them. Some people, they experience this verse and turn inward. They pause. They reflect. They let the truth change them from the inside out. But some people, they avoid accountability. They avoid taking responsibility for the choices they've made with the patterns they were given. Some people create new explanation to avoid inward change. Sometimes that explanation sounds spiritual. Sometimes it could sound like spiritual warfare, dark forces, attacks, or external enemies. And I'm not saying spiritual things don't exist. I know they do. What I am saying is these narratives, without taking accountability or responsibility, they often keep people hypervigilant, emotionally activated, focused on blame outside of themselves. They keep people disconnected from their body. They keep people afraid instead of being responsible. Verse 27 doesn't activate fear, it brings awareness. It doesn't point outward first. It asks, what is happening inside me? Verse 27 doesn't hit you over the head and tell you no. Just like God didn't hit Eli over the head and tell him no. It's quieter. It's sneaky. Just like God sending an unnamed man to Eli. He snuck right in there. Verse 27 is the start of remembering who you really are. It sounds like, this isn't who I wanted to be. I don't think this is how I was always supposed to feel. I didn't survive everything just to live like this. It's not nostalgia. It's not wishing things were the way they used to be. Verse 27 is coming back into alignment. It's coming back to who you really are. It's coming back to your connection to God, to your connection to Source. And when you realize what's happening, you may not act on it immediately. You may feel scared of what these changes mean. You may need time to let everything settle. But when this interruption comes inside yourself, you can feel it. Because you're no longer the same person you were before the truth showed up. Before your truth showed up. For me, this verse didn't come as one big moment. It came as a slow interruption. My whole life, I've lived for other people. I learned if I could love hard enough, give enough, take care of enough, then maybe I would feel worthy of love. That lesson, it came out of my patterns. I didn't even know I was doing these things. I thought I was being loving, loyal. I thought I was just being who I was, who God made me to be. But standing right here, when I look back at my life, I can see in many instances where my life felt off, that I was carrying entire relationships by myself, that I was managing other people's emotions, that I was explaining myself constantly, and I was staying in relationships longer than I should have. I was doing all this, hoping someone would eventually meet me where I was, because I've adapted my whole life to belong. I told myself, this is just how relationships are. This is what love looks like. I've said it in previous episodes that one of the patterns I learned from my mom was the pattern of service. Not only did she receive this pattern from the generations before her, but she also received this pattern by her Pentecostal religion, a religion where women and girls serve. Service is not optional, it's expected. My mom also grew up serving her family. She was the second born, the first girl of a large family. And responsibility was placed on her at an early age. She didn't ask for it. It was assigned. And she learned early on that being quiet, being helpful, and doing what was needed was how you stay safe and valued. So that's what she did. She stayed quiet and helpful. And I know, I laugh because I know growing up, I was not quiet or helpful. And I know that irritated her to no end. And I think partly why it irritated her is because she couldn't be that way. And there might have been a little resentment, and that's okay. I just had a character that couldn't be broken and a will that wouldn't give in. The family and religion that my mom grew up in, the rule was the only way a female can leave the house when they're an adult or can leave the family when they're an adult was by marriage. That was the structure. That was the path. So my mom went from serving her family that she grew up with to now serving her husband, serving her children, and then finding her worth in serving her church. She was the one people went to when they needed prayer. She was the one people went to when they needed comfort. She was a problem solver, a fixer. She carried people. She held space for people. She smoothed things over. She tried to make things right. And this is where I learned something very specific. My worth lived in how well I could be of service. I absorbed that pattern. I learned that helping didn't just meet needs, it reinforced identity. It fed the belief that being needed meant being worthy. And without realizing it, I learned that fixing, supporting, and holding everything together wasn't just love. It was proof. It was proof that I was worthy of love. As a female, another pattern I inherited from my mom's side of the family is that worth came from having a partner, having a spouse, being chosen. Worth came from having children, from building a life around marriage and family. Growing up, I always wondered if my mom ever wanted to be something more than just a wife and a mom, because I couldn't just wrap my head around it. There was so much out there. There was so much to do. And I'm not saying being a wife and a mom isn't admirable, isn't a goal. But I often wondered, did she want to experience something before she was that? Did she want to understand who she was or have a career before she was a wife and a mom? The difference between me and my mom is I never desired to have kids biologically. That is a watermelon coming out of a pea shell. I never wanted to do that. No, thank you. But I still believe that having a partner, having a family was where my value lived. So instead of questioning that pattern, I found a way to fit into it. I chose partners who already had children. I stepped into caregiving roles. I became the supporter, the provider, the steady one. My partner and their kids could always count on me. And I would work night and day to make sure that I could provide. Because if I couldn't, how would I be worthy of being part of their family? My path might have looked different on the surface, but it was the same pattern that was passed to my mom and then passed to me. It was the pattern of belonging through service, worth through responsibility, love through what I could give. In my healing, I discovered another layer of this pattern onion that I just keep peeling back. I have a sister that's 10 years older than I am. And I always knew her and my mom didn't really get along. But what I didn't know is that it started at such a young age. My sister and I were in communication and we had been emailing back and forth. And one of the stories that she told me was that when I was a small baby, her and my mom argued a lot. There was a lot of tension in the house. It wasn't about me. I mean, how could it be about a cute little baby? But my nervous system, it didn't understand that. So before I even had words, my body learned to read the room. I learned how to adapt to how people were feeling. I learned to bring comfort. I learned to make people laugh. And I learned how to soften situations, not consciously, but instinctively. This is when my Captain Save-A-Soul really began. Throughout my life, people have come to me with their problems, their pain, their chaos. And if I'm being honest with myself, I've even sought people out who had problems, pain, and chaos. I learned early on in my life that being helpful made me valuable. Being needed made me lovable. Being the fixer kept me connected. I was in a Zoom meeting with someone, and this person said to me, "You love a damsel in distress." And they were not wrong. They weren't wrong. Because with a damsel in distress, I could prove my worth, my value. I could prove that I could fix what they couldn't. I could feed my ego. That last sentence hurts a little bit, but it's true because we all wear masks. You can call it mask. You can call it ego. You can call it shadow. Doesn't matter what you call it. What matters is, are you going to still keep feeding it? Are you going to still keep doing the same things you've always done to be the same person you've always been? Or are you going to look at your life and say, in my life, I'm the problem? Not because you created these patterns, not because you're a bad person, but at some point, you have to be responsible for your entire life, for what was given to you and what you created. And so, are you going to feed that ego, feed that shadow by giving it excuses, by giving it a villain, by living your life the same way that you've always lived it, maybe just taking a different path, but it still continues to be the same pattern? So for me, a damsel in distress kept me in the same pattern and kept my ego fed. I learned a different pattern from my dad's side. That pattern was emotional distance. From my dad, I learned kids were expected to be strong, expected just to know how to handle things on their own, and to not need very much. Growing up, when I was a kid, I didn't receive a lot of emotional support from my dad, but neither did he. He didn't receive that from his parents. But this pattern for me really became visible when my mom passed away. This pattern showed up as, "You're strong, you'll figure it out." And I did. I survived. But I took that pattern with me. I noticed this pattern in myself when helping to raise my ex-wife's kids. I specifically remember I would say, "My job is not your nurturer. My job is to make sure you can survive in this world if we are not here." And you would think, because of how hurt I was that my dad left me, went out of town to a job right after my mom passed away, that I wouldn't carry this forward, that I wouldn't do the same things. But I did. And looking back, I realize how damaging this was. And man, that is a huge regret for me, because I didn't know what I know now, because I didn't understand we're all here to nurture any child we come into contact with. In fact, that should be the easiest thing we ever do in our life. Show love, show kindness, show patience. Understanding verse 27, it's helped me realize these patterns may not have started with me, but as I'm healing my heart, as I'm reconnecting to my authenticity, as I'm reconnecting to my soul, and as I'm reconnecting to God and healing my nervous system, these patterns, they will end with me. For a while now, I've been really engulfed in this healing. And understanding these patterns I was gifted has been a real shift for me. Nothing changed overnight. And I sure don't have my life figured out. And I don't all of a sudden have this plethora of strength. And I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of ideas. And I talk to God a lot. But I'm not acting on every thought right away. Another area in my life that's changed is my relationships. And it's how I have relationships. I've stopped chasing connection. I've stopped having one-sided relationships. Someone once said to me, no one will ever meet your expectations, so stop having them. People are people. So now I've started meeting people where they actually are in their capacity, because not everyone can meet me at my capacity. So I had to make a change. And I had to be willing to meet them at their capacity. And that has really benefited my life. 1 Samuel 2:27, this is the verse where my pretending stopped, where I've accepted I cannot love someone enough to heal them. I can't fix people into loving me. I can't serve my way into worthiness. The only thing I can do is love myself with the same grace, love, and care that God has been offering me all along. And understanding that is where my life is changing. Not because everything or everyone around me changed, but because I did. This verse doesn't ask you to fix everything. It doesn't demand immediate action. It simply interrupts and tells the truth. Nothing may change overnight, but you are no longer the same. And once truth enters your life, you can't go back to the way it was. Because even slow forward movement is still forward movement. Where in your life has your truth already showed up, but you just keep going like nothing has changed?